That's what I've stated in the interview, yes.
You told them that Jonathan really didn't have an expression on his face. It was as if he was looking right past you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That would make sense if he couldn't see exactly where you were standing, wouldn't it?
I don't know what he could see.
I'm not asking you what he could see. I'm just asking if it would make sense that he would be looking past you if he couldn't see exactly where you were standing.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't understand that question.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was looking past me. It was like looking through me, like staring at me, not paying attention to me being there, just staring at me.
You said his eyes looked like a hologram, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you also said you had your spotlight on, right?
When I pulled up, yes, ma'am, I had my spotlight on.
You didn't say you turned it off, did you?
No, ma'am.
You don't know how well Jonathan can see, right?
I don't know how well he could see, no.
But imagine he could probably see the police cars, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Probably see police officers, right?
Yes, ma'am, I would think so.
But you don't know if he could see what you had in your hand now, did you?
I don't know.
You didn't tell him.
I gave him loud verbal commands to stop and get on the ground. And if he could see I was a police officer, I would think he would obey those commands.
Did you give him any of those commands before somebody shot a taser at him?
No.
You were in here when your attorney asked a whole bunch of people about if Jonathan's face was completely dark out there that night, right? You remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
3 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Normally dark outside at 3 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
If his face was completely dark, you would not have been able to see what his face looked like now, would you?
Ma'am, he was close enough to me that I could see his face. Yes, ma'am.
Because his face was lit up, right?
There were street lights in the area.
You also said you did not smell any odors on Jonathan, right?
No, ma'am, I did not.
No marijuana smell,
No, ma'am.
no alcohol smell,
No, ma'am.
and you're trained to detect odors of alcohol and marijuana, right?
Yes, ma'am.
On September the 14th of 2013, you never told Detective Morales and Sergeant Naylor that you thought you saw anything in Jonathan's hands, did you?
I had no idea if he had anything in his hands or not. No, ma'am, I did not.
You never said you thought you saw something and it turned out to be a cell phone. You didn't say that, right?
No, ma'am.
You never said you thought you saw something and it turned out to be keys, right?
No, ma'am, I did not.
You never said you thought you saw anything in his hands, did you?
No, ma'am.
You said then, on September 14, 2013, that you saw him reach to his side.
Reached towards the right side of his waistband.
And you clarified for them that he did not put his hands inside
No, ma'am, it didn't appear that he put his hands inside of his waistband.
You never told them that he put his hands inside of his pockets or under his shirt either, right?
No, ma'am.
Because they weren't, right? They were out.
They were out, yes.
The only time you told them that you could not see his hands was when he was laying on the ground doing a belly crawl after you shot him, right?
When he reached towards his waistband, I couldn't see his hands. I couldn't see if there was anything in his hands. And his hands were clenched most of the time throughout the encounter.
You didn't tell him that day, did you?
I don't guess I told him on that day, unless it's in the statement somewhere.
61 pages of a statement, and you never said that, right?
That I saw something in his hands.
Or that you couldn't see if he had anything in his hand.
I couldn't see if he had anything in his hands.
You never said you couldn't see if he had something in his hands. You said you could see his hands, right? Except for when he was on the vacuum yellow.
I don't remember saying that I could see inside of his hands.
Inside of his hand?
His hands.
Well, page 39, you want to Page 39, you said you did not see anything in his hands, right?
Yes, this was when we were on the ground and he was still trying to attack me. Yes, ma'am. At that point, I could see his hands.
Okay. At that point, you said you did not see anything in his hands, right?
Yes, ma'am.
At no point did you ever see that you could not see in his hands, did you?
I'm sorry, say that one more
You
time.
never told them, I couldn't see what he had in his hands. You never said that, did you?
I said I didn't know if he had anything in his hands.
You were asked specifically why you drew your firearm. If you ever considered reholstering and going hands-on, or using some other non-deadly force like Little did, and like Neil said he was going to do, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that you were trained, if someone takes a taser out on another person, you need to go legal, right?
Yes, ma'am. Not only trained that way, but verbally reprimanded as well.
Well, what Lieutenant Brady told you was a completely different situation, wasn't it?
He told us about someone having their hands under their shirt. Well, in this situation, this was a priority 1 break-in and entering call for service. We find the suspect matching the description of the B&E call for service. It's 2:30 in the morning. We're not advised if he has any weapons or not. We don't know what he has on him. He's not obeying commands. At that point, I felt the need to have my firearm out. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But it was not because somebody else pulled the taser, right?
That's part of the reason.
You had actually just had taser training, right?
Sometime that year.
On August 7th that year?
The FATS training simulator.
No, sir, the taser training.
I'm not sure of the exact date that I had taser training.
You want me to bring it up there and show you the documents we have when you had
I believe you. You said it's August 7th.
Okay. And in your taser training, your training is somebody else goes with a taser, you're supposed to be hands-free so that you can handcuff them if it works, right?
You're supposed to be the backup officer, and each situation is different.
Right. Right. And you told us yesterday, each situation is different, right?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
So that situation where you said Lieutenant Brady said one of you should not have had a taser drawn was different than this, right?
The situation was different as far as the call.
Okay. And it was different because what you told Lieutenant Brady was you thought that person was actually going to pull out a weapon, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was because that person had been given repeated commands to show his hands, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Jonathan was never given any command to show his hands, was he?
No, he was not.
And that other person had his hands under his shirt, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Jonathan never had his hands under his shirt, right?
This happened so fast, we had every belief in the world that he could have had a weapon on him.
In every call that you go on, somebody could have a weapon on them, right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
You don't get to shoot people every time you respond to a possible
Jackson,
break-in.
see that? But
That's why you told them you fight, was because you responded to a possible break-in, and he matched the description, and he didn't stop when you said stop, right?
At the time, it was a break-in occurring. I wasn't aware that it was just a possible break-in.
You said you went to the residence and the place appeared to be secure.
From the front of the residence, yes, ma'am, it did.
Did you go look around the backside?
No, ma'am, I did not.
So what you told them was it appeared to be secure, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the gentleman in the other situation, you told them was hunched over with his hands under his shirt, being given repeated commands to show his hands, and you thought he was pulling out a weapon, right?
We thought there was a good chance he could have a weapon.
You told them you thought he was going for a weapon, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's not what happened here, is it?
When the suspect reached towards his waistband, I thought he was going for a weapon. And then he was close enough to me
Wait, okay, I'm sorry.
to grab my gun.
When he reached towards his waistband, you thought he was going for a weapon, but then you saw and you told them.
let's make sure we clarify which of the two situations we're talking
Thank you,
about.
thank you. In this situation with Jonathan, when you talked to Detective Morales and Sergeant Abel,
Yes, ma'am.
you said that he put his hands towards his waistband, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you told them that he did not put his hands inside his waistband, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's different than the gentleman who had his hands up underneath his shirt that you actually thought was pulling out a weapon, right?
It is different. Yes, ma'am. But like I said, this happened in 7 seconds.
Jonathan never threatened you at all, did he? He never said a word to you, did he?
Not verbally. No, ma'am.
When you gave this statement on September 14th of 2013, you told Detective Morales and Sergeant Ayler that you did not remember him even swinging a single punch at you. Do you remember that?
I do not. Yes, I specifically said that because I don't remember exactly when the strike occurred. That is correct.
Well, actually, you told them you didn't know how that happened at all. You just knew it happened on the ground, right?
It happened at some point on the ground. Yes, ma'am.
control Jonathan by reholstering your firearm and going hands-on, did you?
No, ma'am, I did not have time.
You did not try to protect your weapon by reholstering it, did you?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And you did not drop your magazine, did you?
No, ma'am.
You knew Officer Little was there to back you up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Neil pulled up right beside where your car was, right?
I later found out, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you knew you had another officer on scene, and you told Detective Morales and Sergeant Naylor that Neil was not far behind you, right?
That's correct.
So you knew you had at least one other officer on scene, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you never saw a weapon in Jonathan's hands, right?
No, ma'am.
And you did, if you were worried about him getting your gun, you did not drop your magazine so that it could not be fired, did you?
No, ma'am, I didn't know if he had a weapon on him. Why would I drop my magazine?
Did you see a weapon on him?
I could not see a weapon on him, no.
Maybe you would drop your magazine because you're taught not to shoot people just because they're coming towards you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Would that be right?
Well, if you drop your magazine out of your gun, then it's not going to fire.
Right.
And if someone is charging at you aggressively and they do have a weapon on them, then that puts you in a bad situation.
You heard Officer White testify the other day,
Yes, ma'am, he did.
and he said that just because somebody charges at you, even if you cannot see their hand, it is not a green light to shoot. Did you hear him say that?
That is what he said.
And that's how you were trained, right?
That's how I was trained.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, since we're in the free fall, of course, we'll allow a 15-minute recess. Recess. 11.
Members of the jury, please stand.